Hey guys, welcome back to another Camera Foundry new product launch video. So today we're talking about the new CineBack for the Sony A7C II. Now this is actually a Sony EVZ1. We're working on the prototype for it, so that'll be upcoming and that'll be a separate video. But I want to show you what comes with this kit for the Sony A7C II, how to put it together, and if you're going to 3D print it yourself and purchase the 3D files, what the files are going to look like, how you should print them, and how to solder things up when it comes to the fan. So let's go ahead and dive straight in. So if you've purchased the kit from Camera Foundry, you're not going to get the small rig plates. You are going to be getting the side plate, which is here, and this is what it looks like mounted to the camera. You're going to receive a fully assembled fan module. So this has the fan already installed. It has the power jack. It has everything you need, the screws and everything. It's just ready to go out of the box. All you have to do is bolt this to the side plate like so. So that's what comes with the kit when you purchase it. It also comes with this bottom plate for the NITSI V-mount. So this plate here, there's a 3D printed part that goes right here using the screws that are already installed. So that's super duper easy because the one that is built onto the bottom of the battery plate is too tall. So you're going to be removing this and placing this there instead. So at the end of the day, you kind of get this, the side plate with the foam attached for protecting the screen, the fan module fully assembled, and all you have to do is bolt it to the side plate. And then it also comes with all of the necessary screws to put this whole thing together. From there, you purchase a couple cheese plates and a battery mount, and all of that we'll talk about here in a second. But I wanted to go over what comes in the box from us, from Camera Foundry. Now I'm going to paste the entire build section from the video over on the main channel. So if you want to build this for yourself, it's going to talk about all the parts needed, which I'll have down in the description. And it's going to talk about, putting this entire thing together from scratch. If you're going to 3D print this on your own, go ahead and jump to this timestamp, and there you'll find everything you need to know about 3D printing and assembling this from scratch. To build a A7C II, you are going to need an A7C II, and this also works with the A7CR. You'll also need 2 small rig 1681 cheese plates, 2 CineBack camera base plates, 1 NITSI rig cheese plate, the NITSI mini V-mount plate, 1 or 2 3/8 to 1/4 adapters, a Sony FZ100 dummy battery. I'm going to use a Condor Blue model, but there are tons of options out there at all kinds of different prices, a short angle DC cable, and the CineBack A7C II kit. The last thing you're going to need is a cage for the A7C II. I'm using the original small rig A7C cage, not the small rig A7C II cage, as this was a pre-production camera I'm working with, so I didn't have access to new cages, but once they're available, I'll test it out and update you in the comment section of this video. But for now, the original A7C cage fits and works. Now let's take these parts and build a cinema camera. First, take the A7C II and install it in the small rig cage. Next, we need to work on the metal frame that holds the camera and other parts in place. Start by taking one of the large small rig cheese plates and one of the CineBack plates and connect this screw to this hole. When done, it should look like this. This is going to be the bottom of the rig. We want the back to look like this and have these holes line up. The smaller plate will stick out on one side slightly, and that's fine. Next, take the NITSI rig plate and insert 2 1/4 by 3/8 bolts from the CineBack kit here and here. Then bolt it to the previously made plates in this orientation. Check the back to make sure these holes are aligned. Now we can set the entire bottom section aside, and we'll start in on the top section by taking another large small rig plate and inserting 2 1/4 bolts from the CineBack kit here and here. Now grab another CineBack plate and mount it in this orientation using those 2 screws. It should be centered when looking from the back. Now we can mount the top section onto the bottom section. Flip it around and use a flathead screwdriver to attach them together like you see here. With that done, your frame should look something like this. Now we can slide the camera cage in between the top and bottom plates. Looking at the top of the entire assembly, line up these holes in the frame with the threads on the cage. cage. Use 2 screws from the CineBack kit to secure the frame to the cage. Make sure that the hot shoe is centered in this slot to ensure that the camera is straight. It's okay if these screws look a little off, as the cage and camera don't center at the same point. Now we can flip the entire setup over and secure the base plate to the camera cage using another CineBack screw here. Check for any plates that may not be square and adjust and or tighten the screws as necessary. At this point, I added 2 1/4" to 3" adapters to these larger threads so that I could add my own quick release plate for tripods. You can add a 15mm rod base plate here and or your own tripod plate of choice. Now let's start working on the battery plate. Take the Nitsi Mini V mount plate and remove these 4 screws and slide out the bottom cover, as it is too tall to fit our rig. Using those same 4 screws, attach this new slim cover included in the CineBack kit. Do not over tighten here. Now insert 2 long screws that come with the Nitsi plate and attach it to our rig here. It should perfectly fit between the top and bottom plates of the frame. Now we can add the CineBack side plate and fan module. Take the 2 included M3x14 flathead screws and insert them through the slots of the CineDock side plate here. Now those screws can go into these holes on the fan module. Make sure that the little arrow is pointing toward where your camera is going to go. Do not over tighten these screws. The final alignment should look like this, but the fan module can be adjusted and moved to any of these slots. I designed this to be modular, so down the road we could add more accessories and modify this as needed. If it is not already installed, add the included foam strip here to protect your screen when it is closed. Now the entire CineDock can be slid into the side of the frame and fastened down with 4 or 5 included bolts at the top plate and the bottom plate. Do not over tighten these. You don't need a lot of pressure to hold this in place. If you haven't already, add a base plate or quick release to the camera. The side plate might stick out slightly toward the bottom, so if it interferes with your tripod or other rigging, you can add another Nicey rig or other cheese plate to correct this and give you a little bit of space between the cinema camera and your quick release plate. Next, connect a dummy battery from your camera to the battery plate, along with a DC cable from the battery plate to the fan module. The fan module can support 5 volts up to 13.8 volts. So you can use the 8-volt jack on the side of the battery plate for a slower spin. And if you want more cooling, you could get a D-tap to 12-volt regulated adapter. Okay, so that's how to build the CineBack. Now let's get into 3D printing these parts if you're going to be building this from scratch yourself and just purchasing the 3D model files. So if you are going to be doing this on your own, you're going to need to purchase all of the parts we talked about earlier. So the small rig plates, the V-mount plate. You'll also need screws, in particular these socket screws. So these are 1/4 thread, 3/8 long socket screws. You'll also need a total of 6 M3x14 long flathead screws, and that's going to be for the fan module. Then we have the actual 3D printed files. So obviously we have the side plate, which is 1 part, and it gets printed in this orientation on its back. You shouldn't need any supports, and you can really use any setting. We went with 0.2 layer height since there are 1/4 threads here at the top, and we wanted that to thread nicely. The fan module is made up of 2 parts. The main body, as you see here, with a compartment at the top for where you're going to solder in a jack. And then we also have the lid, which will slot on, and you'll see how that works once we get this guy soldered up. You're also going to need a 40mm by 10mm computer fan. You can go with anything here. So we have the fans that we have sourced for our kit, which looks like this again, but you could go with Noctua if you want really, really quiet. These are very quiet, but you know, there's a billion fans out there. So do some research. When in doubt, the Noctua fans are fantastic. And then you're also going to need a DC jack. So this particular one is what is going to be required for this project. So it is a 5.5 by 2.1, I believe. And I'll have a link in the description. It has 3 pins, and you're going to solder the positive to the rear pin here, and then the negative to the kind of pin that's in the center of the entire jack. And you're not going to use this one that is on the outside. So this is what you're going to need, and it's very important that you get this particular jack, the kind that has kind of a square front but is rounded off in the back, because it's going to perfectly fit in our fan mount. So now we're going to talk about soldering up and building the fan module. So again, this is what we're going to be going for. A complete little block here with a nice little jack, and then the lid. We've got the arrow saying, you know, telling us where the air is flowing and all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and put this together. So the first thing you're going to want to do is install your fan. And you'll notice that there is a cutout here that goes from the fan area up into the jack area. So you're going to take your fan, you're going to slide it in place like so, and you'll see that we have our 4 slots there, and I'm just holding it in place here, but you can see the cable slots up in the top. So I'm going to go ahead and take 4 of these M3x14 flathead screws, and I'm going to screw this guy in place. All right, so I've got the fan bolted down with the cable sticking through the top. Now we're going to shorten this cable because it's way longer than it needs to be. So what I'm going to do is take our jack and slot it in place. And so you can see here, I'll bring it closer to the camera, that it perfectly fits in that little compartment. And on this side, you can see that it stays in place. And we're going to add a little bit of glue to that in a little bit. So to get the right cable length, I'm going to give myself a little extra room. That's always a good idea. So I'm actually going to take the cable and go away from the connector, then fold it back. And something like that with a little bit of a loop there ought to do the trick. So I'm going to mark with my finger where I'm going to cut. So that's roughly how much extra cable I'm going to go with. And I'm going to hold this, grab my snips here, my side cutters. I'll go ahead and cut that. Now I'm going to go ahead and strip back or peel apart the positive and negative wires on this fan. Red is positive, black is negative. Every fan might be a little different, so pay attention to that. I used a pair of wire strippers to strip the ends of the wire. Now we're simply going to twist them together like so, and we're going to wire it up to our DC jack. So I've put it back in place. I'm going to take the positive or red wire in this case, stick it through that connector, and I'm going to bend it back on itself just like that. And I'm going to do the same with this negative wire. So stick it through the negative terminal like so, and then we'll bend it back on itself. So it'll kind of look like that. I'm going to go ahead and run over to our soldering station, which is not easily filmable, and I'll hit this with some solder and we'll be right back. All right, so now you can see I have both of those wired and soldered up. I also cut off and snipped the excess solder. So now we have a nice clean solder job. Now I'm going to remove the jack and put just the smallest dot of hot glue right in here. So in the corner there of where the jack's going to go, just a little bit, and then I'm going to stick this guy in there and make sure that it is flush with the front. Sorry about the focus there, guys. And then we can go ahead and tuck our cables in and add our cap to this thing. Okay, so the jack is now glued in place and we're ready to add our cover. So the way this works is you're going to take your fan module, hold it in this position, and this cover is keyed in a couple places. So this pin here, this pin there is going to line up. So I find it easiest to mainly focus on this back section here and push straight back while keeping things aligned. So you'll hear it start to kind of click in place, and just make sure you're not pinching your cable. And just like that, we're done. So now that's going to be really difficult to get back off. The part is keyed in multiple places, so it's not going to come apart easily. No screws required, and you're good to go. So now we have an assembled fan module ready to be installed with our side module. Now the last thing you're going to need to do if you're 3D printing this self, aside from bolting this in place like so, is going to be adding the padding. So I will see if we can source where we got our foam pads, but essentially I believe it's like an 1/8 inch or 1/4 inch wide long roll of it. And so you can use really anything here, but this is just really simple foam padding to keep the screen protected so it doesn't slap against the plastic or hit the screws here, which they're flush, so they shouldn't be a big issue. But anyway, that's the last thing you're going to want to do is find some way to pad this thing, and you don't want too thick, maybe 1/16 of an inch, 1/4 inch, a couple of millimeters ought to do the trick. And that is going to take care of you if you're going to be 3D printing or purchasing the CineBack kit. This has been a lot of fun working on this project, and I can't wait to make more models available for more cameras. So stay tuned to the website. I'll have links to everything down in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in our next camera Foundry build.